I thought my problems were over, only for a policeman to take me away to a nearby house where he sexually abused me, and he recorded videos of it. It started after my husband's death. We exhausted all our savings on his cancer treatment after he was diagnosed with cancer of the liver. I had to look for a job to cater for my two boys, who by then were 2 and 4 years old. The first job I landed was as a house help in the eastern estates of Nairobi. I had to do it for my kids. But a week later, the master of the house sexually assaulted me, leaving me with no option but to leave his house immediately. I was back to job hunting again, when a family friend approached me, telling me about the Middle East and how people were earning a lot of money there. I was convinced that given the situation that I was in, I had no other choice. My mother-in-law agreed to look after my children as long as I could send money home for their upkeep. July 2014, I, with hundreds of women and girls, embarked on our journey to Saudi Arabia. We spent the night in Sharjah, Dubai, to connect to our flight the next morning to Saudi. We were hungry and exhausted because we didn't have any money to buy food. Now, when we arrived in Saudi, our passports were taken away, and that was the last time I saw my passport for 2 years. I was taken to a house that looked like a warehouse. There were no windows, only lights, and you couldn't tell whether it was day or night. It was also another day there without food or water. Some girls were being auctioned, and others were coming in large numbers. The place was full, so we were taken to another house in the city of Riyadh. When we arrived, I was so shocked. The place was so congested, with women from other parts of Africa and Asia. 4 girls shared one bed, so most of us just slept on the floor. Some even slept on the stairs because there just wasn't any space. We could hardly breathe, and meals were served only once a day, and that was during lunchtime, and the portion, of course, was limited. Most of the women missed that plate of rice. The strongest fought for it. There were women, both African and Asian, who were mentally disabled, but nobody cared. One of the days, as we were lining up for food, a woman fainted because of the merciless sun and heat and the pushing and the shoving to get a plate of food. It just became too much for her. We helped her by performing first aid. But shortly after, we heard screams from the bathrooms. An Ethiopian woman had just committed suicide by hanging herself from the shower. We protested that we wanted to go back home, only to be silenced by the guards through beatings. After a couple of days, I, together with some Kenyans, were taken to Kurayat town, near the Saudi-Jordan border. My new master picked me up after paying the agent. The work was so much. They made me work in the sun, doing all these heavy duties, taking care of 5 kids, lifting and carrying heavy objects. I was taken from one relative's house to another, and of course, I was never allowed to complain or to ask for any money. I was forbidden from sleeping before 2 a.m. I barely had time to rest. My bedroom was at the rooftop of their house, built with iron sheets with no ventilation, just a light bulb. One side of the room was like a dumping site where they put the used and unwanted items such as clothes, broken furniture, and electronics. Well, I was given a tiny mattress and a blanket. I slept on that dirty floor. And when the wind blew, I was terrified because it rocked the roof up and down. I thought it would blow away the house. couldn't take anymore, so I decided to run away while they were watching TV. It was my only chance, because when they went out, they would lock me up in the house. I ran, and I found myself on a road as a man was driving by, and he came to a stop beside me. He asked where I was going, and I told him that I needed to go to the Kenyan consulate. He agreed to give me a ride. I noticed the man was overspeeding, and I realized the guy was up to no good, but I kept calm. I watched to see his next move. He came to a stop in a lonely place where there were no buildings, only garbage. He removed his trousers, and I immediately threw him to the other side of the seat. Luckily for me, his window was open. I tried to escape through the car's window, but he caught my legs. Knowing the danger that I was in, I kicked the guy harder and he left me. I ran as fast as I could and found myself on another road. As I was trying to figure out what to do next, I heard a flower vendor yelling. And I realized he was actually calling the police. Shortly after, the police arrived, and I was taken from one police station to another and another until very late at night. I thought my problems were over, only for a policeman to take me away to a nearby house where he sexually abused me, and he recorded videos of it. I was so tired and exhausted. My mind was blank. I couldn't even think. Next thing, I heard his phone ring and he told me to get dressed. I found my master waiting for me at the police station. He took me back home, and on his way, he bought a manila rope. I knew things were not going to be okay for me. When we arrived, I was shoved into a room where I was tied up and beaten. I was locked up without food for 2 days. I gave up. I decided to obey their commands no matter how harsh. They would punish me for every mistake, and I was still working for their family members and relatives. After a year and 4 months, I couldn't take it anymore. I got sick, and my master wanted me to go and work for his parents. I refused. I told them that I was done working for them. I was threatened with the police. They even said that I would be beheaded for refusing to work. But I had made up my mind. They took me to an agent who was supposed to look for a possible buyer for me. I found Kenyans, Ethiopians, Ghanaians, and even Sri Lankan women there. We would work in the households daily without any pay. The agent and master would be the ones to benefit. Some were sexually exploited. Men would come in the pretense of wanting a cleaner, only to take them to rape them. We suffered physically, mentally, psychologically, with no hope or freedom. Our rights were completely stripped. We were commodities, and we were powerless. Luckily for me, a woman came specifically for me because a work colleague recommended me to her. Well, we agreed that I would work for 8 months, and after that, I could return to Kenya. Her sister had given birth, so she needed a house help. I worked there for the remaining months, taking care of the small baby and the other 5 children. I did everything from cooking to laundry to cleaning. Even though the workload was extremely heavy, I had hopes that one day I would return back home and be reunited with my family. I had to endure and go against all odds, and through God's mercies, I came back to Kenya on the 2nd of August, 2016.